Resignation of British Prime Minister Theresa May. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition Labour Party, says May was right to call it a day. He added that she's now accepted what the country's known for months, that she can't govern, nor can her divided and disintegrating party, calling for her replacement to order a snap election. He says the burning injustices she promised to tackle 3 years ago are even starker today. The Conservative Party has utterly failed the country over Brexit, he says, and is unable to improve the lives of people in the country or deal with the most pressing needs. So for more analysis on the resignation of Theresa May, we are joined on the line by Huber Danso, who is an expert on international matters. Huber, thank you so much for joining us. So much has been happening since the announcement of Brexit, and Theresa May has been at pains to convince the British Parliament about her plans, but she has failed to impress. So let's start with this. Where did she get it wrong?
Well, I think first of all, I think we should commend the Prime Minister for her tenacity and her commitment. I think it's a credit to anybody. There's no question, I think, that the international community as well as the British electorate will accept that she really did pick up a poison chalice. So she had a thankless task of really trying to, bring two completely opposed sides together. And I think, the commentary really suggests that she was given a very difficult task, and perhaps she didn't execute as well as she needed to, and I think that's really why we've ended up where we are today, unfortunately. It's a very, very complex and challenging role that she unfortunately found herself in.
Let's look at the plan. MPs have poked holes in it, and one would ask, what is displeasing about this plan? And also, regarding some of the issues that she failed to convince the European Union that leaving the EU would not leave both parties in a worse off state?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to appreciate that the European Union is a sum of its parts. So it's not going to be in the European Union's interest to ever make it easy for a member state to exit. So I think that was one of the precursors that were underlying any negotiation in the first instance. But by the same token, I think it's fair to say that the EU respected and had a good regard for wanting to maintain a relationship with the United Kingdom. But unfortunately, you had some very clear views and a very strict and specific and clear mandate that was given by the British electorate about the Brexit, and sovereignty reigns supreme. And I think bringing those parts together, in spite of all of the efforts and all of the compromises, both in Brussels as well as in Westminster and across the United Kingdom, that one of the key distinction points now is really that each side does not feel that their views are represented, and neither do they feel that the Prime Minister was sensitive to their realities. And I think that's going to not only be the sticking point for Theresa May's legacy, but it's also going to be the challenge that could very well bring us back to this same point in no time at all. I mean, within 3 or so months, mark our words here. I mean, it's really going to be a very similar conversation. Bringing those two sides together, Colleen, is a real challenge.
Yeah, the SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon, says the election of a new leader is deeply worrying. The prospect of an even more hardline Brexiteer now becoming Prime Minister and threatening a no-deal exit is deeply concerning. Are there prospects that a snap election would lead to another referendum and perhaps a reversal of the whole Brexit initiative?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely up in the air. We actually think that a real opportunity was missed by the Prime Minister by not really pushing back more on the Oliver Letwin scenario, where he was looking at that sort of no Brexit deal type legislation. I think that the Prime Minister could have been a lot stronger in her rebuke of that. And as we know, and as the Conservative Party have made very clear from some of the grandees, it's highly unlikely that the Conservatives could win an election. Now you have Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party out there, so the prospect of a no deal is highly likely in the eyes of many, as the agenda that an incoming Conservative Prime Minister may take. So it's deeply worrying.
So Boris Johnson is regarded as the front runner to replace May as Prime Minister. He says it's time to follow May's urgings and come together to deliver Brexit. How differently should he tackle issues where MPs have failed to reach a consensus?
Well, I think the challenge here is that the no-deal option was really something that was deeply concerning for the party, deeply concerning for the country, but it was never really put out there as the ultimate result, because there was always this prospect that an extension could be gained or another extension could be gained from Brussels. So I think the tactic that the incoming leader, and I would not be the one to say that it's likely to be Boris Johnson, because people are saying we can only really make that call if he becomes one of the remaining two in the contest. So I think let's just let him be one of the remaining two, the top two contenders, before we start inaugurating him into that position. But I think one of the key things is there has to be some degree of this is the end of the line. It's the deal. It's a no-deal scenario, and there's no exit, or we take a deal. And I think that's one of the mistakes that the Prime Minister made. There was always this prospect of an extension to keep talking. And I think a lot of the pundits are actually saying that if the extension didn't exist, then Parliament would probably have voted grudgingly for the Theresa May deal. And we may end up seeing something similar to that if this type of approach is taken and the presence of an extension from Brussels is not on the table.
So, Huber, the intricacies of the British political system are really too ghastly to contemplate. I mean, at the moment, focus should have been on Brexit, where it has failed, and how to correct the situation so that the matter can be finalized. But we're talking about succession. We're talking about resignation of a prime minister and electing another one. Why are these politics going that direction instead of coming up with a solution that the British people are facing now, that is Brexit?
Yes, well, I mean, that's just party politics for you. When there's a leadership contest, that and you're going to need a leader to push the agenda forward. I think that has to be the leading issue. But when you start looking at the Brexit and you're putting it into context, one of the major conundrums is this consequence of how you deal with this whole constitutionality, and that is this whole issue of a second referendum, and all of the challenges that throws up in itself as well. So I think the leader has to be chosen first, and then we have to get the constitutional issues addressed properly. I mean, do you have a referendum? Take the results of the referendum, and then if you don't like the outcome, elect to have a second referendum. So these are some of the issues that the incoming leader will need to deal with, not only within its own party, but across the benches, as well as gain the confidence and build a rapport with Brussels. I think we're underestimating what that's going to take. Brussels have been very patient, but when they gave that last extension, it was very clear that they anticipated that there would be a new leader that would have succeeded Theresa May at that point. So, we also have to take a view that Brussels may change its tone and its step in terms of how flexible and accommodating it's prepared to be in these negotiations.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Interesting times ahead, Darlene.
Okay, thank you very much. Huber Danso is an expert on international matters, on the resignation of Theresa May and where she could have gotten everything wrong. Let's take a break.